So initially I was going to do a little skit where I'm lying in bed until that pumpkin thing from Deltarune shows up and goes, "You're taking too long." But then my computer broke and I had to buy a new one, so there was actually a legitimate reason for my delays beyond the standard procrastination. And then I procrastinated even more. I was hoping to get this video done by the end of October, but just ignore that. Also, hi people who didn't watch my cave story video. This is what I look like now. I've run out of topics to cover in these intros, so let's just get started. Wait, one thing first.
Totally unaware of the danger about to descend on the city and on the world.
Sunny day, sweeping the clouds away.
The Botsfords are waiting with bated breath to learn from Weatherman Sunny Days whether some heavy precipitation will end early enough to not ruin a big picnic. But first, Sonny has a tradition of announcing citizens' birthdays, and yes, this is going where you think.
Just playing. She's actually 68 today.
Good job picking 68. Eileen gets upset he didn't mention her birthday, and abducts him while oddly calm music plays.
You seem like a nice young lady, and very strong for your age. Could you please tell me what you plan on doing with me?
Sonny refuses to announce Eileen's birthday without seeing her birth certificate, even as Eileen forces him onto a fake news set. Even WordGirl says it'd be easier to just play along, but apparently the weatherman has a stronger code of ethics than the news reporters. The fight abruptly ends when Huggy sees WordGirl tied up alongside Sonny, and assumes she's cheating on him as a three-legged race partner, and Eileen offers to be Huggy's partner instead, and this triggers her generosity weakness. You know, I've been having some spells of lightheadedness the past couple weeks, and this is not helping. Sonny is returned to the station, announces the weather, because apparently no one else could just read the teleprompter, and gives a shocking reveal that it really was Eileen's real birthday the whole time.
Heavens to Betsy, what are the odds?
I'll give him one thing, this is a more unique concept than Eileen deciding to steal something because it's wine, and there's some shockingly good jokes outside of the Eileen and Sonny thing, presented without context. I honestly burst out laughing at the reveal it really was Eileen's birthday, and the three-legged race partner climax was so contrived and absurd it was hysterical. Sonny being not particularly scared of Eileen is fun at first, but he sadly doesn't have much of a personality beyond friendly and obsessed with upholding his meteorologist code. Oh wait, I tell a lie. He also likes doing dragged out back and forth fake-outs, the worst way of providing suspense. Honestly, the most interesting thing about him is the obvious racket he has going on. Think about it. He won't announce someone's birthday if he doesn't get proof, and apparently the only proof he'll accept is birth certificates. I don't know what scam you're running, but I'm onto you days. Well, I guess he also provides some lore if you're into that. Namely, that Grandpa Ming, Reuben Grinder, Edith von Housinghouse, Violet, and Eileen all share a birthday, and that Fair City is apparently on the East Coast. Don't ask me to identify that state.
After a nice tea party, all of Eileen's friends gave her lots and lots of presents.
How many of Eileen's stories stem from a desire for companionship? Is there a video essay in there somewhere? So if the core of an episode's story isn't enjoyable, but everything else is it a good episode? Yes. I think Earth Day Girl and Wrong Side of the Law have better stories, but this one is the funniest Birthday Girl episode thus far.
Meteorologist code?
Meteorologist.
Seymour!
Seymour's latest attempt at defrauding the production company is literally just the lottery. He sends out tickets to everyone in the city, says he won't delay reading the winning number any longer, and delays any longer. I see where this is going. He's dragging things out to run as many ads as possible. Can't outwit me, show.
Mom, Dad, you've been sitting here watching TV for the past 2 hours.
Also, he stole Mr. Big's mind control tech. While Tim and Sally have anxiety attacks over the suspense, and Becky is once again the only reasonable person, we see that Seymour has been having his brothers rob banks while everyone is distracted. Yeah, that's completely what I meant about the plan. Can't outwit me.
Mom, Dad, is it okay if I step outside for a few minutes?
Oh, come on, they're even playing the mind control theme. Was it supposed to be a Mr. Big episode before they remembered they already had a TV villain? WordGirl goes to investigate and eventually traces the robbers via them being the only car on the road. Apparently Seymour Orlando Smoothbrain didn't think of that, and she carries the brothers 3 to jail. Also, Smooth Brother 1 won the lotto, and the prize was just stuff from Seymour's closet. Still a better value than I expected. I thought it'd be just $1 covered in sparkly spit. Remember when Life Gives You Potatoes back in season 1? And how it relied a lot on coincidence, but that was okay because coincidence was a featured word and they were tongue-in-cheek about it? Delay is a featured word here, and it goes for a similar concept, and fails. Tim and Sally's enthusiasm
I can't take the suspense anymore!
Delay! Why can't he just tell us a winning number already?
starts off funny, but it's basically the same scene over and over. The word is delay, not repeat, right? The word is delay, not repeat, right? WordGirl's investigation afterward is shockingly dry as well, save for a surprisingly good scene where Smooth Brother 1 nearly gets found out from dropping a coin. Shadows still go a long way in the show, though this is also how we learn any of WordGirl's villains could evade her by hiding around a corner. Seymour right after this may be one of my least favorite episodes of the series. The concept is technically more creative than other Seymour episodes, but keep in mind that creativity here means that Seymour performs a crime spree like literally every other villain. The whole way through, it's either dull and flat or so repetitive and predictable it bores me to tears. Of blood. We get the Botsford singing with Bob the Tomato, though, at least that's something. Oh, and we also get to see two banks that are way more visually interesting than the generic one we always get, and I'm never gonna forgive this episode for that.
We'll be together forever, Isabella.
Charlie is on vacation and picked the Butcher, of all people, as the substitute henchman for Dr. Two Brains. Apparently they've been friends for years. And may I say, it tickles my heart they reference Baker and Candlestick Maker despite having no objective reason to. WordGirl intercepts the new trio's museum robbery, and Butcher says he's not going to use his meat powers out of respect for the henchman position. He sticks to this for about 2 minutes. Dr. Two Brains apparently gets turned on by giant clumps of meat. Two Brains tries to escalate things into a full team-up with his own Iron Man suit that shoots cheese from his hands. Anyone want to tell him he's using the stuff he wants above all else as ammunition? But Butcher wants to keep things casual since this is temporary anyway, which upsets Two Brains since he's looking for something more serious. Two Brains lashes out at the bank and Butcher kinda just stands around awkwardly until Charlie shows up. Butcher decides to cut his losses and end this relationship while Two Brains runs out of cheese, his and the henchman's punishment being to serve as decorations for Becky's school dance. I forgot to explain that subplot? I don't care. Unlike Seymour right after this, the fill-in revolves around a single main gag that actually works. I'm not sure why Two Brains is so obsessed with teaming up with the Butcher, unless it really is a euphemism.
Oh, okay. Well then, back to the usual game plan.
But this fascination and fanboying is a side of him we don't get to see that often. I'm honestly kinda disappointed they go the Two Brains gets upset at him for the climax route because it feels less charming and unique. Meatloaf's jealousy is also good as a side gag, though the whole he thinks they should surrender thing doesn't make much sense. And the Butcher himself works surprisingly well as a straight man, not getting why everyone is acting so weird and eventually taking the first opportunity to ditch everyone. Honestly, it seems like he barely cares about the job to begin with, he's just doing a favor for a friend. It's a different sort of team-up that shows off different sides of all the characters involved, making this feel like a very fresh and funny episode. Also, it has probably the best exposition guy gag ever.
How'd you find us?
See? I told you they were at the bank! Wait, are you a policeman? No!
Between this and the school intercom he illegally hijacked earlier on, good to see EG expanding his horizons.
Dr. Two Brains is robbing the national.
Oh, and if you really want to discuss the subplot, it's just more of Becky is a bad artist with a whole thing about her wanting to contribute that feels like it was supposed to reflect the main plot, but they kinda just forgot to connect them. Chuck's condiment ray is broken and ruins his crimes, while WordGirl has a mild case of the hiccups. So everyone is having an equally bad day. After Chuck narrowly escaped, he takes the raid to Hal Hardbargain, owner of a villain supply store. Hal guilt trips Chuck about forcing him to skip some event, but still does the repairs. While Tim does Tim things to remedy Becky's hiccups, Chuck runs into more technical problems, as well as a healthy dose of gaslighting from Hal, who eventually offers to compensate for Chuck's issues with a slew of upgrades and new gadgets. Chuck takes his arsenal to crush the bank, but is hampered with an utterly humiliating succession of glitches, to the point his defeat is more being saved from falling to his death. He is nice enough to help WordGirl recover from hiccups though, until Tim ruins everything. The highlight here is the introduction of Hal Hardbargain, master of salesmanship, being sleazy, and enunciating so much it feels like a snake wrapping around your ears. He's a lot of fun here, and he even name drops a bunch of villains we've never heard of if you're a lorehead. Though honestly, the presence of Big Toe Larry makes me think Hal completely made up all these guys. What's weird though is that Hal kinda just disappears from the story after the second shop scene. Think about it, he's a major focus of the plot, the climax is a marathon of his gadgets utterly failing, and yet he isn't even mentioned, let alone given one last appearance to tie off his role in the story. We don't even get to learn if Hal is supposed to be incompetent or a scammer, though later appearances would put a thumb on the scale. The climax does, though, truly serve as the ultimate point and laugh at the silly pathetic breadman sequence. Chuck's mishaps throughout are kinda predictable, but serve as some fun comeuppance for his criminal activities while bringing out both his angry side and his bashful side. Chuck is really just the perfect character for a premise like this. WordGirl's hiccup thing is, well, essentially just a case of we need to give her something to do while Chuck gets yelled at by the funny cyborg man. It makes for some cute moments with Tim, I'll admit, but we don't spend too much time on it, and that's for the best. I will admit though, there's some pretty good comedic timing with some of the hiccups. This kind of reminds me of The Ballad of Steve McQueen, in that the villain is the real protagonist while WordGirl is kinda just hanging around. This episode is a bit weaker in terms of plot and humor. It's basically just Chuck fails, Chuck gets yelled at, repeat, but it's a breath of fresh air to divert focus as fully as this.
Pickle Power Pack away!
Pickle Power Pack, pick the pack of pickled Power Pack peppers.
Billy, you okay? Not really. Find the power pack.
I've got good news. That the mule is going to come back in style.
After Two Brains breaks out of prison, he decides to let Squeaky's evil mouse brain take full control for a bit because he's bored. What follows is a Twin Peaks dream sequence, and bam, Squeaky's here in all his terrifying majesty. Hold on, I think I need to find some new pants, because I just spilled some soda on mine. Meanwhile, TJ gets to tour WordGirl's spaceship hideout because he won a contest, and WordGirl isn't that enthused, refusing to let him remove his blindfold and taking the first opportunity to ditch him and go fight Two Brains. You need to learn to spend quality time with your brother, Becky. Dr. Squeaky Brains is apparently like back in A Simple Plan if he had super speed and a high-pitched voice, which allows him to overwhelm WordGirl and trap her in foam. Apparently this makes him too evil and devious to handle, which is backed up by Squeaky deciding to, waste WordGirl.
Squeaky brain boss. Getting rid of WordGirl forever?
Yeah, this is going too far. No one on this show has ever resorted to eliminating WordGirl before.
How would you like to help me test my goop brain?
You wouldn't.
Goodbye, WordGirl! How would you feel if this evil genius turned you all into a pile of goo?
Find the controls! Quickly!
Those don't count because they weren't done by a guy with a hamster bottle. WordGirl gets home only to immediately get an invitation to Two Brains' hideout, where she and Huggy are trapped, and Squeaky forces WordGirl to either let herself or Huggy be turned to goop.
Or will she abandon Huggy just to save her own neck?
Zap Huggy.
You need superhero team-up counseling. Thankfully, WordGirl correctly predicted Squeaky would do the opposite of what she'd said, so she got shot at and had her cage gooped instead of her. The henchmen decide they like Steven Brains better, so they force Squeaky to change back with the power of standing over him and speaking sternly. Oh, and TJ becomes Daredevil.
How? You can't see your way.
Maybe some of us look at the world differently than others.
You know, for a character called Dr. Two Brains, you'd think the Two Brains thing would play into the plot more often, but here we are. And sadly, this is kind of a disappointing showing of Squeaky. The way he's hyped up, you'd think he'd be destroying everything in sight, nearly killing people in the crossfire, doing the most heinous and vile things a show like this could get away with, which, granted, is probably limited to intentionally trigger WordGirl's allergies, but still. And yet, he's basically Dr. Two Brains with a sugar rush. Remember back in the shorts when Squeaky was just a mouse and tried to bite WordGirl? That made him look more vicious than this episode does. The whole "nothing on planet can break this cage" thing could have been a fun beat, but Squeaky himself acknowledged WordGirl as an alien earlier in this episode. Makes him look kind of like an idiot, which... I mean, have you seen the size of that brain? But him being dumb isn't really part of his characterization up to now, so it feels forced and jarring. The henchman wanting Steven Brain back also could have been good, but it's just them being a bit mopey about their dilemma and stressing over killing WordGirl when, again, Two Brains has tried to do that before. You'd think they'd at least lean into their angst over being abandoned, that's a featured word after all, but they kinda just bring it up offhandedly while not acting that different aside from tripping Squeaky at the end. And the TJ plot is just bad. Its setup drags on too long, and there's practically no actual content between that and the ending. TJ touring the spaceship could have been an entire episode on its own. This episode had a lot of promise, but just ended up being a big letdown. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Huggies.
You know, for hardened criminals, they can be so cute.
The motto of every villain stan ever.
And I'm not your assistant. I'm vice president in charge of evil development.
While TJ does a jigsaw puzzle and everyone around him refuses to believe he possesses basic competence, WordGirl gets called away to find Mr. Big, already in police custody. Is that the cop from the Rashomon episode? He's the only police in the show I trust. When Mr. Big questions Leslie's ability to be a villain, she comes up with a plan to beat her boss at his own game. Mind control all the company's employees to steal materials for a super mind control device shaped like a ridiculously giant squishy bunny. You don't even need the mind control, just threaten to take away their health benefits. WordGirl and Huggy, overwhelmed by the amount of employees, go to recruit Mr. Big from jail. Yeah, the Hannibal Lecter thing typically works because the criminal has some brilliant mind or knowledge of the underworld, not if his power amounts to inherited wealth and terrible fashion sense. Nevertheless, he does know the location of a master mind control. WordGirl, Huggy, and Mr. Big go to confront Leslie and...
Squishy bunny, oh Leslie, I am with you, you win!
Still better than Snyderverse Lex Luthor. Mr. Big decides to partner with Leslie, but WordGirl grabs the master control and disables Leslie's device. Leslie, for her part, is just happy she proved wrong what Mr. Big assumed about her. Back at home, Becky apologizes for being condescending to TJ and sticks up for him to Sally. Hey, can we get main villain Leslie full-time? Putting her in the lead antagonist role allows her most entertaining traits to shine more than ever before. Her cadence is as flat as ever, but she takes to making dramatic speeches that you can hear coming in Mr. Big's slimy yet immature voice easily, making for a great contrast. She's like if Violet became a supervillain.
I have a dark side.
Her plan is also a fun spin on Mr. Big's mind control shtick that actually uses the massive company thing in a different way from just sending out mind control products. She really does outdo Mr. Big in every way, hence why he loses his composure so thoroughly and why watching it happen is so fun. The TJ subplot is... It's good, but I don't like it. It ties into the theme of underestimating people very well, and it's great to see TJ prove everyone wrong and Becky admit she was wrong, but seeing Becky and Sally condescend to TJ so much just personally bothers me. It's awkward and uncomfortable to watch. It's probably funny if you don't mind all that, but I'm not one to judge that. If WordGirl were a modern, more serialized show, I just envision a long-term arc where Mr. Big gets jailed and Leslie takes over the company permanently, but sadly, there's no modern serialized WordGirl out there. Yet. Mark my words. Anyway, this episode was great.
Oh, okay. To assume is to believe...
Oh, great job, Mr. Big. Now the key to all mind control is in police custody. You just made the city 1,000 times worse.
Wait until we're organized.
Well spoken, Hawkman.
No, it isn't!
Hey, does anyone else think this episode's title and Chuck and Brent Ride Again should have been swapped? This is where they team up for the second time, i.e. Ride Again. Anyway, Brent shows up to be Chuck's sidekick again because he feels he let Chuck down last time. Aw, what a good brother, helping to commit crimes. Meanwhile, Becky is making a cake for a scout badge, but she has to do it alone, which causes issues when TJ tries to join in.
Thanks, but I don't need help.
You have to let me help, Becky.
Are they just reversing the subplot from last episode? Brent decides a strict schedule is what he and Chuck need to become better criminals, which actually manages to impress Reginald.
You have been so cooperative, we're not even going to tie you up.
Although you still could if you wanted.
Or maybe he has other reasons. Despite Brent's efficiency boost, Chuck decides he's changing things too much and fires him, then decides to turn the whole city into a gigantic sandwich. You know, eventually you're gonna run out of room to grow, pal. Only way you could escalate beyond this is literally conquering the world or something. One problem though.
We're on a tight schedule, so can we start the battle?
Since no one's in any rush, Brent admits he just wanted some quality time with Chuck, and the two make up. WordGirl destroys the giant bread and goes home to finish her cake and spend some quality time with her own brother. Unlike Ride Again, this feels like a proper sequel to Chuck's brother. They actually explore the relationship between Chuck and Brent, parallel it with Becky and TJ, and look at all of that from a new angle. Chuck's brother was about conflict between siblings, jealousy or anger over a bad mistake, while this is focused on the need to spend time with your siblings and not shrug them off. Brent and TJ both want to hang out with their siblings, but Chuck and Becky are too caught up in their own things to realize it. To accomplish a good relationship with your family, it's not just enough to resolve fights. You need to actively cultivate said relationships. You can't just focus on yourself or expect the other to do all the work. Admittedly though, it hurts the message a little how much focus they put on Brent's schedule and organization. Chuck's behavior comes off less like aloofness toward his brother and more like annoyance at his brother's philosophy. It makes it seem like the message will be geared around that, so when Brent admits its motivation, it doesn't really feel like it's tying the episode together like it otherwise would. Even after WordGirl wins, they keep harping on the schedule thing. Maybe these two messages should have been split across 2 episodes? The theme itself is still a good lesson though, and it's always sweet to see the siblings getting along. There's some decent gags too, including the subtle one of WordGirl not having any idea what happened between Chuck and Brent since she hasn't been involved until the ending. Chuck with the sidekick of Brent doesn't have quite as much punch as Chuck's brother, but it still feels like a decent successor with a good moral for kids. Even those who don't have siblings probably have someone in their life they should spend more time with.
I can't talk to you. I'm fired.
You're hired for finding the joystick.
It's on the table.
All right, thanks. You're fired.
Oh.
Fired twice in one day. This is gonna be hell on Brent's resume.
You see, Mr. Powers, I love gold.
While Tim is setting up a yard sale so he can afford some antique fishing poles, Granny May is... what? Meatloaf, what are you doing here?
All I had to pay Dr. Two Brains was 1 cheese Danish.
That's all I'm worth?
Yeah, you're easily worth at least 1 Oreo cheesecake. Granny May's newest scam is a service that swaps people's expensive gold jewelry for yarn replicas... because gold is heavy?
Swap my fancy gold watch for a pile of worthless yarn with... That sounds like a swindle if I ever heard one.
Yep, Bampy's back too, and thankfully the lead poisoning still hasn't gotten to him yet. Still though, he's suckered in when Granny May makes a sweater he can give to Becky. Bampy arrives at the yard sale and tells Becky everything. Since he knows Becky's secret identity, Bampy uses his own superpower of being Tim's father to get Becky away from the yard sale so he, WordGirl, and Huggy confront Granny May. Meatloaf traps WordGirl and Huggy, but they direct him to Tim's yard sale in return for being freed. Meanwhile, Bampy chases down Granny May and fights her in an old factory. Eventually, he tricks her into getting buried by a pile of sandbags. He used to work at the factory and knew the schedule for when a bunch of sandbags would be dumped on the ground. You know, standard factory procedure.
Wow, this is amazing rubbish.
I imagine this will be my reaction when I finally get around to watching Miraculous Ladybug. Be honest, who here expected a Bampy and Granny May episode eventually? There's nothing particularly special to their dynamic, but I'm glad they got the concept out of the way in an actually pretty good episode. The obvious scam doesn't rile me up like others because we actually get to see someone aside from WordGirl recognizing it as an obvious scam. Ironically, since Bampy's from out of town, he's the person I'd most expect to go along with it uncritically. Even when Bampi does fall for it, it's because he gets a bonus gift for his granddaughter. He's basically being dumb for someone else's sake. Bampi's just like how he is in Bampi Battles Bots. Energetic, show-stealing, and super fun to hear joke around or just talk. Becky having an actual confidant is also something I've been waiting to see for a long time. It's really refreshing and sweet to see Becky not only be honest about her activities, but actively enlist Bampi's help. I also find it really satisfying how Bampi's watch and him mentioning the Sandbad factory earlier set up how Granny is ultimately defeated. It's not anything unique, but it's neat how a one-off line and the source of Bampi's jeopardy interlink with each other and the story at large. Even Meatloaf's presence was a fun twist. I'm not 100% sure why they decided to add him in, but seeing him have a different dynamic with the new boss is enjoyable, for as little as we see of it. The plot is kind of ho-hum, but I don't mind in the slightest because of how fun it is. If Bampi wasn't here, this would have felt pretty middling, but his mere presence jacks it up several slots. Honestly, I wouldn't blame people for thinking Becky wasn't actually adopted and she inherited her superpowers from Bampi. Tim and Sally go for an ice cream outing for their wedding anniversary, and Becky gets to be in charge at home. Unfortunately, it turns out the Whammer is also at the ice cream place, and he wants to take the happy couple's ice cream for a super sundae he wants to make. He also decides to tie them up for some reason. Becky hears what's happening, but can't leave TJ alone, so she has the brilliant idea of recruiting him to help. At the ice cream shop, everyone kinda just treats the occasion casually until Whammer traps WordGirl in the ice cream. TJ, however, disguises himself as a waiter and sabotages the sundae with super cold ice cream to trigger a brain freeze. WordGirl sticks around to watch Sally and Tim's date. Apparently she's the only kid on Earth who likes seeing her parents be all lovey-dovey. They just slapped in some nonsense to, oh, that was a kiss, that was an actual kiss, aww. Anyway, the two leave early to get back to their kids. Another one for the How I Met Your Mother totally ripped this show off tally. You expect me to believe this is an obvious idea anyone could come up with on their own? If your favorite fanfiction tag starts with an F and ends with 2 more Fs, this is the episode for you. It's just a constant string of Tim and Sally expressing their love for each other and their kids, as well as Becky trusting TJ to take care of himself, and TJ being excited to work with WordGirl. Again, I honestly think they just wanted to write a compilation of heartwarming moments and slap some nonsense in to have an actual conflict. But even still, that conflict just enhances the tone more. Whammer isn't trying to wreck the city or rob a bank. He wants some ice cream and is willing to ruin an anniversary date to get it. Still bad, but lower stakes than other episodes. And there's a certain charm in low-stakes stories. It's why Ant-Man and the Wasp is one of my favorite Marvel movies. And when it's not being sweet, it's being silly with a bunch of charming and well-timed jokes.
Not on our wedding anniversary. Dun dun dun. Did I just say that out loud? I was hoping the music would do that.
And finally, it's cool to have the whole family be involved in the crime together, with PJ in particular getting to save the day once again. I don't know if this is one of my favorite episodes of the series, but it's definitely made me smile more than most others. Just inject Botsford family fluff into my veins until I legally qualify as a stuffed animal.
And since WordGirl is a superhero, and a very responsible one at that, this is one occasion where I will allow it.
So responsible that she drags a child civilian to a crime in progress to make her own life a little bit easier. Now I kinda wanna see what would have happened if Tim and Sally did see TJ there. Dr. Two Brains pops into Hal Hardbargain's shop. Thankfully, the show acknowledges the weirdness of him going shopping when he usually uses homemade gadgets. He got a coupon. He buys a diamonds into cheese ray to rob the jewelry store while Hal goes off about his past customers again. I have so many questions about the little kahuna there, and none of them can have good answers. WordGirl's 1 millionth key to the city ceremony, the narrator said it, it's canon now, is interrupted by an anonymous whistleblower warning her of Two Brains' plan. Unfortunately, she shows up too early, and Two Brains is somehow able to pass himself off as not being up to anything.
Are you really going to arrest me for shopping?
Yeah, that earns the death penalty in this state. Two Brains goes to Hal to buy a new ray, since WordGirl confiscated the old one, but soon realizes he could just steal the new ray. The whistleblower, who has the same hair color, fashion sense, and claw hand as Hal, warns WordGirl of Two Brains' next plan, but yeah, I think you can figure out the pattern by now. Two Brains returns to Hal and has a realization.
You know, I just thought of something. How did WordGirl know about my crimes before they even happened?
I mean, if she had super hearing or something, it'd make sense. Two Brains forces Hal to distract WordGirl so he can steal the other rays back, and a fight breaks out at City Hall. Two Brains brandishes a ray to turn WordGirl herself into cheese. So are we supposed to assume that's squeaky at the wheel, since Steven Brain would never be so unhinged? The ray doesn't work, however, and WordGirl captures all the criminals, including Hal, since he still did help Two Brains commit his crimes. This should have been Hal's debut. He was already implied to scam his villainous customers, but now he's actively trying to ruin their crimes to keep them coming. He even admits he's a big fan of WordGirl because she forces the villains to go to him for repairs and new gadgets. Hal isn't a villain who actively commits crimes. He makes money off the other villains and their fights with WordGirl like a war profiteer. And he's still just as fun as last time. He feels like an evil salesman version of Bampy, honestly. Hal being the whistleblower is extremely obvious, but they're really not even trying to hide it. And Two Brains using Hal's whistleblowing against WordGirl was actually a pretty good, unexpected spin on the episode's formula. Two Brains' attempt to look innocent at his crimes could have made WordGirl look annoyingly incompetent, but she never really buys it and raises the good point that there's technically no evidence of a crime, save for those eyewitness testimonies, but whatever, and they don't know the whistleblower was even telling the truth. Besides, Dr. Two Brain trying to act casual is really funny.
I will fire this ray that I just found sitting here. It isn't mine. Where did this come from?
In Word Hiccup, Hal felt like a running gag. Here, he feels like a character that the episode fully takes advantage of. I know which one I prefer. And even outside of Hal, this is just an overall enjoyable episode. Recommended.
Oh, Jews are better than people, and that's why they're my friends.
What is this feeling? Am I sad for Reginald? This feels wrong. Please start being smarmy again.
Ah! Me noggin is huge!
TJ's taken to making custom WordGirl bobblehead figures, and when he wants to get a new swing set, he realizes he can sell his bobbleheads to the city's massive market of WordGirl fans. TJ's gonna run into issues with whoever's licensed to make the actual, oh hey, Johnson's here! TJ decides to sell them during WordGirl's fights, which is of course a terrible idea, though not for the reason you'd expect. All the customers try to get WordGirl to autograph their bobbleheads, which distracts her enough to get overwhelmed by Chuck's crusher. Becky tries to get TJ to change sales tactics, but for some reason she doesn't approach him as WordGirl, so it's not a convincing argument. TJ sets up shop as Dr. Two Brains is robbing the museum with a neat little device.
Get a load of this. This setting is for shrinking, and this setting is for turning things into goop, and this setting is for enlarging.
So how many parsnips does that thing use? A scuffle results in TJ's money getting gooped, WordGirl getting shrunk, recurring background B to the rescue, and Two Brains getting trapped within a ring of enlarged bobbleheads, which is about as terrifying as you'd expect. Feeling bad for TJ, WordGirl uses the ray to grow the Botsford swing set, but also makes TJ promise to stop selling things at her fights. While Whammer Anniversary showed off TJ as an ally, this shows TJ as an annoyance, and both work pretty well while feeling true to the character. Usually when TJ is acting as an annoyance, it's due to him chasing after WordGirl and acting obnoxious to Becky. The bobblehead business, though, takes another angle that still ties into his WordGirl fandom. Though in truth, TJ himself isn't even being much of an annoyance. He does indirectly cause some annoyance, but frankly it's not his fault that people are so obsessed with getting their bobbleheads autographed. Honestly, a better direction would be to focus on him actively putting himself in danger by willingly showing up to fights, though that might have felt a little too close to Violet Superhero. Heck, we only get one instance of TJ's business interfering with WordGirl, even indirectly. I can envision a montage of WordGirl trying to fight multiple villains but constantly getting hounded, or her struggling to defend TJ and co during the final Two Brains fight, but nope. I think they needed more of this to really sell the conflict between WordGirl and TJ. It does take more than 2 minutes before TJ even gets the idea to sell the bobbleheads. Maybe we could skip ahead to him selling them at a fight and he explains about the Uber swing then? It also doesn't help this episode that the bobblehead stuff isn't that funny, though there are a couple good hits, like TJ predicting crimes better than Becky. We only pick up comedically with the Two Brains fight, which is admittedly pretty good with how fast-paced it is. This episode could have been pretty good with a few tweaks, but it suffers from an overlong setup and too little in the middle. I could do without a souvenir of this episode.
All because your customers wouldn't leave her alone.
Becky, I can't stop.
Why is his face on the... Why is your face on the ceiling?
I'm a superhero! I'm a motherfucker!
Victoria has gotten fed up with WordGirl being hailed as a better superhero than her, the non-superhero, so she decides to become a non-superhero, mostly due to her parents getting in her head. She whips out the Sun Girl costume from Cherishes the Word again, and I can't get over it. It looks to be just a hoodie with a sun emblem, as if trying to one-up WordGirl's star, a belt around her stomach for some reason, and a cape she probably tied by hand. She's trying so hard to be the anti-WordGirl, but she looks more like when Lord Zed tried to create some dark Power Rangers. Violet uses... Wait, what? Violet? Why did I write Violet there? What? Anyway, Victoria uses her literal trance music and telekinetic eyes to trick people into thinking she took down a villain instead of WordGirl. The only way this makes any sense whatsoever is that the villain was Amazing Rope Guy and no one in the bank was even paying attention. And Victoria probably is capable of taking him down on her own. But I draw the line at everyone fawning over Victoria, giving her a key to the city, and calling WordGirl old news, when all Victoria supposedly did was stop Amazing Rope Guy, who could easily explain what really happened. WordGirl gets fed up with the city spitting on her yet again and decides to let Victoria try actually fighting a villain on her own. This results in the city getting torn apart by the Whammer. Good call there. It does at least get Victoria to admit she's no superhero, so WordGirl arrives to beat Whammer with a banana peel. Okay, now I'm scared. WordGirl does make a point of sticking up for Victoria against her parents' criticism and expectation. Victoria thanks her by teasing a future episode where she'll become a supervillain. I feel like all the Victoria Best episodes thus far are forming a sort of progressive arc. Victoria is introduced, her hero persona is teased, that comes to full fruition here, and now we're promised her actively serving as a villain later on. I know the show doesn't do long-term character arcs, but if there's any character who could use one, it's Victoria. Unfortunately, there's some garbage weighing down this installment of the story. Specifically, everyone believing Victoria with no doubts completely breaks my suspension of dumb belief. I try to stay patient about Fair City's people being dumb because it's the only way some stories work, and it's so prominent that it honestly becomes part of the show's charm after a while. But this is on par with Granny's Intuition or Bonkers for Bingo, and it just feels absurd. It's a forced way to get Victoria and WordGirl where the story needs them. Thankfully, outside that, there's not really anything exceptionally wrong with this episode. It teaches a lesson about how not everyone is suited for every task, kind of expanding on the no one could be amazing at everything moral from Victoria's debut. It almost feels like a responsibility thing. If you're gonna take over someone's role, you must be ready to fulfill that role. I was actually worried Victoria's parents would fall off the series and she'd just become a flat, arrogant child, but that doesn't seem to be an issue thus far. Mr. and Mrs. Best are the root cause of Victoria's issues, and WordGirl recognizes this and meddles to steer them and their daughter onto a kinder path. While this episode could have used another pass to make Victoria ingratiating herself to the city more believable, I think it's overall an enjoyable outing with a good moral, as long as you don't find Victoria grating. Not too grating anyway. And to be fair, I was not as enthused about this episode on first viewing.
Oh, hi, Victoria. What's going on here?
Why would you go to her house and experience her presence more? So I sympathize if you'd rather trap her inside a giant trophy cup.
Please come home, 'cause I miss you, Gary.
Gary, come home.
Ms. Question has a daring plan to get rid of WordGirl for good, abducting all the villains in the city and leaving them entranced in the middle of the desert. With no villains around to thwart, WordGirl doesn't have anything to do and eventually agrees to leave for some other city that needs her more. Naturally though, Ms. Question takes the opportunity to commit crimes with impunity, and WordGirl stuck around as Becky, not having believed Ms. Question's supposedly altruistic motives for a second. WordGirl and Huggy get hypnotized by Ms. Question when they go to stop her, but get an unexpected bailout from the other villains. For some reason, they're a bit miffed about their free vacation and take out their feelings by helping WordGirl eliminate Ms. Question.
Thank you, Mrs. Botsford, Warden.
Does the Warden even have a name? This episode reminds me of Band on the Run, but its plot points and tone are different enough that it still feels distinct. I like how it kicks off right away with the abductions. A lesser episode would open with Ms. Question stewing in her lair about wanting to get rid of WordGirl and eating up a lot of time. While Sally and the Warden do come off as rather conveniently dumb given how easily they believe Ms. Question, I think it actually makes some sense here. They're suckered in by the idea of an idyllic crime-free city, and since it's so close, they neglect to consider the obvious catch. The episode doesn't really focus as much on WordGirl's supposed departure as you'd expect, again compared to how Band on the Run showed her fighting Mr. Big as Becky, but I don't think that's an issue here because it's clearly depicted as a tactic by WordGirl to flush Ms. Question out. It's not really trying to be a there's no WordGirl story. And really, I think the actual core of the episode is the other villains. Them returning is a twist that makes a lot of sense, and while the set piece of them teaming up with WordGirl is a bit too brief, it's still cool to see a team up like that. Still, could we maybe someday get a big fight with all the villains against one single foe? Nah, that's probably too elaborate. The entire episode is pretty fun, maybe a bit flat at points given how casually the idea of WordGirl leaving is treated, but Ms. Question's plan is nice to see play out. At a certain point it just becomes raking her over the coals for how not thought through it was, and there's some decent schadenfreude in that.
Let's play!
Who else wants to see Bo Handsome do a Let's Play channel? He could play a Jeopardy video game, a Wheel of Fortune video game, a Family Feud video game, a Who Wants to Be a Million. What do we do?
A little bit of piracy.
Becky is hanging out with Scoops at the theme park, only for Captain Tangent to show up at the new pirate ride. Tangent wins the fight, and gets the idea to form a pirate crew to help with his crimes. Scoops decides to join the crew for the sake of the story. Scoops, alongside a trio of dogs, helps Captain Tangent on his latest crime spree, which doesn't go well, partially because Scoops isn't really the criminal type. When Tangent talks about robbing an incoming ship for the next crime, Scoops passes this info on to Becky.
I need to practice my pirate speak. Park the car in Harvard Yard.
WordGirl intercepts the raid and takes down Captain Tangent by knocking his magneto hook to Huggy. It's revealed the precious cargo he was after was tennis balls, and Scoops gets his article published in the Big City Times. Again, how does he not have an official internship there yet? We're 2 for 2 on good Captain Tangent episodes. The not-so-good Captain himself isn't much of a highlight this time. He's just like his last appearance, but again. But Scoops makes this all a lot more fun. He's just as enthusiastic as Captain Tangent, so they pair together well, and the idea of going undercover with a villain crew is just something that makes sense for Scoops. I think it would have been funnier if there were more talking crew members than just Scoops. When I first saw clips from this episode, I thought Tangent was recruiting a crew of kids, but what we got is still pretty good. Special mention to the montage in the middle. Not only does the lack of dialogue prevent Tangent's tangent-ing from getting stale, it's just funny in its own right, especially when they stop at the jewelry store. The action is also surprisingly enjoyable. Magnetism is a rather simple power, but they have Tangent use it in some fun ways, like turning animatronics into attack drones. It's also a nice touch that Tangent's ammo in the final fight are more hooks, and splitting the fight into 2 duels still adds a bit more spice that other villains don't have in their fights. There's even some little moments that add some extra charm, like WordGirl accidentally hitting her head. An unnecessary detail, but just a fun little thing to add some more personality to the fight. I'm still shocked Captain Tangent isn't more popular. He's just such a good vessel for goofy antics and fun fights. And Scoops gets a good showing too. I also like how the show seems to be involving the supporting characters in the villain plots more as we go on. Also, note how Scoops is swinging his legs like that as he lies there? This is definitive proof that he's into WordGirl and the two are endgame. That is the universal symbol of wistful infatuation. Just check any anime. Down with Tobey, Scoop Becky forever!
Stand up now and please make a wish.
And here we go with the reaction to A World Without WordGirl. Definitely going to be the meat of the episode, I'd assume. Or meat of the video, rather. Why am I bothering correcting myself? It's not like this part is going to make it in the video anyway. Unless I deliberately decide to put it in as like a meta joke. Hi everyone, are you enjoying the video? I'm not very good at, like, improv. One day at the city's power plant, a giant ball of oh, wait. wrong Becky's birthday episode. Becky is celebrating her birthday once again, and her family is putting on the most elaborate and spectacular party they can manage. Not sure how they can afford all this, but they got a bouncy castle, pony rides, and an entire Ferris wheel plopped in their backyard somehow. But this is a superhero story, and superheroes are never allowed to be happy, so Becky gets called away multiple times to take care of things at the sandwich shop. First Chuck showing up, then Butcher helping him, then Dr. Two Brains helping them both, then the energy monster rampaging. And even as WordGirl gets increasingly annoyed, her birthday activities get stripped away one by one. By the end of the day, Becky's so fed up that she decides her birthday wish will be for a world where WordGirl never existed and she was just a normal girl. And so she blows out her candles, and suddenly Chuck rules the world. Yep, Chuck the evil sandwich making guy rules the world. How did this happen? Magic. No, seriously.
Warning, if electrified, cake may become enchanted.
I believe in magic!
I'd make a snide remark, but Ms. Question got superpowers from a lightning strike, so maybe electricity really is magical in this universe. Becky investigates this new world and discovers just how much of a hellish dystopia it is, in that all the stores just sell sandwiches, and Chuck periodically makes people replace their words with sandwich-related words for some reason. Honestly, I'm half convinced he remembers the old timeline and is trying to spite WordGirl. Becky gets arrested by Sheriff Butcher and taken to Chuck, who explains how he just kept escalating with no superhero to stand in his way. Becky escapes to a sandwich shop where she finds Tim and Dr. Two Brains, the latter reduced to a lowly worker. Becky explains everything. Does that include the fact she was a superhero? And remembers there's still some cake they could use to fix things. Chuck and the villains working for him chase down Becky, but thanks to Two Brains' interference, Becky gets home to make a new wish and return everything to normal. Before I start my analysis, I'd like to shout out DJ Sadbean's video on this episode, which spends way more time describing and dissecting every possible detail and exploring the characterization of the alternate world. Honestly, you've probably seen it already, but still. For my part, I think this is a great two-parter. Part 1 is the build-up, slowly bringing Becky's frustration with her obligations to a boil. The villain defeats are a bit repetitive, but I think that works to the episode's benefit, letting the viewer better relate to how antsy Becky's getting. The only major problem I have with this two-parter is that apparently Fair City is experiencing time dilation, since these minute-long fights are enough to waste WordGirl's entire day. This is the risk you take when you give your main character super speed. It makes it difficult to pull off them being late or wasting time and make it convincing. It is also a bit annoying that A World Without WordGirl doesn't get to The World Without WordGirl until the end of the first half, but I think any earlier would have made Becky's anger feel too rushed or force a less impactful and satisfying cliffhanger, so this is probably for the best. But when we do get to Chucktopia, it's amazing. Practically every frame has some detail referencing Chuck or sandwiches in general, from obvious things like Reginald suddenly being fat to smaller details like Reuben Grinder and Sammy Sub having wanted posters. There's an unusual amount of unique assets, new character designs, and overall effort on display. One thing I noticed on this watch through, Chuck seems to be flying around on the pickled jetpack from Hicc, the one that didn't work and nearly got him splattered like a broken jar of mayo. But in this alternate world where everything went perfectly for him, it works flawlessly. I joked about the sandwich words thing, but even if it wasn't a deliberate jab on Chuck's part, adding it was a great way of emphasizing how awful this world is, even from the show's educational side. This is a world where WordGirl was never around to teach people vocabulary, so people's vocabulary sucks. The incoherence of such speech emphasizes why the show's mission is so important. Maybe my favorite part of the episode is the final chase, though. It's already a good start that without WordGirl's powers, Becky is reduced to escaping in Tim's car, and the increased danger really raises the stakes, even beyond the whole if Becky fails, the world is stuck as an evil subway empire thing. And Two Brains saving the day is the icing on the cake. Was that pun on purpose? Yes. Him being the one villain to turn against Chuck reflects his closer relationship to WordGirl, and in the context of the altered world, it's cool to see him get retribution on Chuck as well. The most important facet of this episode, though, is the themes. When you get down to it, this episode is a variation on the classic It's a Wonderful Life formula, just with a lot more capes and mustard. But as DJ Sadbean pointed out, this is also kind of a commentary on responsibility and the importance of not letting your more selfish desires get the best of you. Becky creates this world through through a desire to be free of that responsibility, and in returning it to normal, she accepts it and returns to being the city's defender, even at the cost of her personal life. Yes, this is the most cliched superhero lesson ever, but it's a good way of giving that lesson, especially for kids who may be learning it for the first time. A World Without WordGirl is probably the most bombastic episode of the series in terms of both plot and visuals, and thankfully it does not waste that. Nothing feels underutilized or boring here, and there's always something grabbing your attention. I am enchanted by this one. Though there's one thing that confuses me a little. Why are Becky's friends and family so happy about living in Chucktopia? Are they faking it out of fear? Or did Chuck convince them to like him by investing a lot of money in sandwich propaganda? I just said the phrase sandwich propaganda.
Please meet me with your thick arms.
What? What the f***?
After Butcher gets tricked into stealing Captain Huggy Face merchandise, he runs into Reginald and gets an idea to kidnap him to act as Butcher's personal appraiser. Becky wants to leave and stop Butcher's robberies, but is stuck painting the fence at home.
Paint however you want. I won't be watching. You could even leave here, go do something else all day, and then come back and paint later. It doesn't matter to me.
Or not. WordGirl arrives late to the museum and doesn't know where to go next. And so...
Meanwhile, at the store you buy gold. Wait, we're supposed to switch scenes before I say... Oh, man.
Come on, WordGirl, now Butcher gets to keep all his loot because you cheated. Butcher continually gets away despite having a grown man strapped to his chest and steals a bunch of deceptively expensive stuff. He also makes a point of feeding Reginald, and here's where we learn his powers can summon plates as well. Don't ask questions, don't ask questions, don't ask questions. Butcher eventually gets annoyed enough with Reginald insulting everything he sees that he goes to rob Reginald's jewelry store. Unfortunately for him, Huggy also figures that out, and the heroes arrive to take him down.
Pick me up again.
Okay, I think I need a couple weeks to parse what this says about Reginald and how he deals with villains. Or I could just do this. Becky expects TJ to just gloat about painting his half of the fence first, but...
Now let's paint your half.
Aww. Though it turns out he was running a ploy to get Tim to see their teamwork and be so heartwarmed that he'd take them for ice cream. Well played, Tim Jr. What do you think TJ stands for? Aside from the Rashomon episode, this is the first time Reginald is a real main character, and I am here for it. He's as hilariously snooty as usual, and spending so much time at lesser stores brings out a lot more venom and sarcasm from him. Seeing him in dire straits for so much of the episode is also entertaining in a schadenfreude way. With how rude he is, it's fun to see him taken down a peg by the indignities he suffers at the Butcher's hands. There's even a couple moments where his persona slips and we see a less formal side, like Pick Me Up and him laughing during the montage in the middle. But while Reginald is the crown jewel here, he's not the only gem. The narrator fretting over WordGirl's unsuperhero-like cheating works pretty well. It feels like a better version of that one gag from Mr. Big's premiere. The narrator's dismay isn't so extreme it feels jarring, and it gets to be a minor running gag. The fence thing is another in a growing list of subplots that don't hurt the episode, but don't really contribute anything noteworthy to the plot or humor. I guess the subversion of TJ's bragging is kind of a good swerve, but nothing would be lost if it was cut. But this isn't a TJ episode anyway, this is a Butcher and Reginald episode. If you find Reginald annoying, steer clear, but if you find him as funny as me, check it out.
There's so much junk around here.
Well, that's just your opinion, sir.
Personally, I wouldn't go, it's just like your opinion, man, when a violent criminal is in the store, but that's just my opinion.
And thus, the city was devastated absolutely by Calamity. Tobey.
A date, date, between Chuck and Whammer has wrecked the school's playground. In response, Miss Davis enlists her class to gather a bunch of recyclables, sell them to the recycling plant, and use the money to get a new playground. And whoever brings the most material will get the playground named after them. Tobey uses his robot army to steal as many recyclables as he can, but Becky somehow manages to tie his material's weight exactly.
I guess we could either dedicate the playground to both of you, which would be kind of cool because your names would be next to each other forever.
No.
This feels like a metaphor for Becky somehow. Miss Davis gives the two 1 hour to collect more recyclables as a tiebreaker, and Becky is forced to go WordGirl to stop Tobey from stealing things that are not so recyclable, including Exposition Guy's car. You think he goes to a therapist by now? In the ensuing fight, all of Tobey's robots end up converted into the new playground, which is dedicated to WordGirl. Much to her dismay, as she wanted Becky Botsford to get some honor for once. This is a nice example of an environmental message that isn't being super heavy-handed about it. Yes, recycling is a major part of the episode, but it's not like they're doing all this as an environmental initiative. Not to say I think a heavy-handed environmental message is bad. I liked Earth Day Girl after all, but it's nice to see different takes on the theme. The climax with Tobey just stealing random stuff even feels like a lesson about sorting different types of trash properly and not trying to cheat the system while making things harder for others. My favorite part of this episode is Becky's characterization. We get a little bit of her wanting to ignore the robot so she can collect more recyclables, but the big thing is her desire for the playground to be named after Becky Botsford specifically. It says a lot about the relationship between Becky's two identities. She, of course, appreciates the love and respect WordGirl garners, but as regular kid Becky, she can't help but feel envious of herself. In tandem with the aforementioned desire to shirk her responsibilities, it shows how important Becky's civilian life is to her. She doesn't want it to get drowned out. She wants both her lives to live in balance. Usually. She doesn't see herself as a superhero disguised as an ordinary person, she sees herself as an ordinary person who serves as a superhero. But character analysis aside, this is still a pretty enjoyable episode. Practically every character gets at least one funny line, and it's always a good time when Miss Davis is on screen.
Good thing you're here, WordGirl, because I was just about to do something. You can ask anybody.
And there's a couple small moments I like, such as Tobey plugging his ears while his classmates cheer, or Violet and Scoops hugging only to be split apart by WordGirl arriving. I don't even know if that one was on purpose, but I wouldn't put it past her. Also, Claire continues her streak of showing up out of nowhere. Does she still even have a job? I do kinda have to question why Becky hesitates to fight the robots when doing so would help prevent Tobey from winning, though. It doesn't really last long enough to hurt the pacing, but it's a weak way to express Becky's dedication to winning in my opinion. Aside from that though, this was a good episode and the opposite of a Calamity.
Hey, that's no fair! He can't use robots!
You used a monkey and an excavator. You're in no position to talk.
You died at the time of living the child.
Am I the only one who finds the monochrome title card disconcerting here? Usually they're so colorful. What? Why are you looking at me like that? A mysterious new villain scouts out the security measures at the von Husinghaus house, then returns to his base, where he's watching in clips of past episodes, footage of WordGirl's fights. Just a grown man intently studying a preteen girl, nothing creepy at all here. Meanwhile, TJ is excited for WordGirl to make an appearance at his fan club meeting, but after a fight with Becky, Sally orders that she attend as well, despite both their objections. Becky ends up leaving anyway when she overhears the mysterious villain stealing a diamond brain from the von Husing house and comes face to face with this new foe for the first time.
I am the Learnerer!
One more time.
WordGirl quickly catches on to his habit of doubling suffixes and asks that he stop, only for the Learnerer to deliberately keep it up to annoy her. This guy might be one of the show's strongest villains, yet his mastery of psychological warfare may be his greatest weapon. In the ensuing fight, despite WordGirl's insane screaming, the diamond brain gets knocked into the backpack of Johnson, who's coincidentally racing by to make the meeting. WordGirl and the Learnerer both show up at the treehouse and continue their fight, though if I could make a brief tangent...
Did I ever tell ye about the time I found a clam that looked just like me Uncle Bill?
I couldn't help but notice TJ and Johnson are the only club members here. Is it the show staff cutting down resources, or is this a subtle way to communicate the WordGirl fan club is just becoming an excuse for these two to hang out? I leave that to you, my friends. The Learnerer's ability to learn WordGirl's tactics allows him to counter everything she throws at him, except for set up a giant slippery slide. Apparently, this is only the third of WordGirl's secret plans. Out of all the show's villains that I never got to see as a kid, which admittedly isn't that many, the Learnerer is the one I've been looking forward to the most. He's played by Weird Al Yankovic, who at this point I see more as an animation voice actor than a musician. Seriously, pick a cartoon from 2000 onward, and there's probably a 50% chance he shows up at some point. As you'd expect from the guy who did Everything You Know Is Wrong, Hardware Store, and I Think I'm a Clone Now, oh hey, Weird Al puts in an extremely energetic vocal performance. It just feels like the Learnerer is having a ton of fun committing his crimes, even with moments like the intro that show how determined, serious, and intimidating he can be.
You!
Nothing but super serious crime times here. His powers are also pretty fun. Admittedly, creating countermeasures to anything he sees isn't the most original ability, but it lends itself to some fun, fast-paced action scenes, especially with how acrobatic and noodly he can be. I'm especially looking forward to his appearances going forward, because if they stick to this gimmick, that essentially forces them to come up with creative new ways to beat him every time, and I cannot wait to see what they do. The one issue I have with the Learnerer is his visual design. Given how the suit itself is apparently the source of his countermeasures, it's shockingly plain. It doesn't have much of a distinct identity. The colors don't help. He's basically a giant blob of an ugly yellow with some red highlights that I think are supposed to form some logo, but just feel haphazard and generic. I like the visor with the rotating eyes though. The Learnerer is so fun that I didn't even spare time to gush about Johnson or WordGirl talking up Becky. This is such an enthralling, high-energy episode and one of the best villain debuts in the show. Watch it yourself. I trust you'll find I didn't misjudge it.
My priceless diamond brain of Santa Tortuga!
You say priceless, Liz, but we all know that thing is a bootleg ripoff of Crystal Skulls. I bet that thing won't even awaken a bunch of aliens to brutally kill you. Because the alien is already awake and PBS won't allow her to kill.
This is bad comedy.
Mr. Big is putting on a dinner theater show, having apparently sworn off evil. You know, on some level I kinda admire the city's populace for being so trusting and willing to believe in redemption. Unfortunately, this really isn't the show for that. Mr. Big's plan is to make the theater goers wear special glasses that mind control them into thinking everything is a lot higher quality than it actually is. Lasagna instead of oatmeal, quality comedy instead of whatever Mr. Big can come up with, etc.
Anything I say will be hilarious.
Okay, maybe we should let him cook. Becky, despite being naturally leery, takes a bit too long to catch on to Mr. Big's standard operating procedure before confronting him. However, he mind controls the audience, which would have made a cool plot beat, but all they do is throw oatmeal at WordGirl until Big's bodyguards restrain her and Huggy smashes a mind control device. Mr. Big gets taken away, and WordGirl makes arrangements for an alternate performance. Specifically, she enlists Tim to perform his one-man show about the inventor of the fish stick, which I think is the most Tim Botsford sentence ever. Well, I will say this is at least a more creative use of mind control than most of Mr. Big's episodes. The mind control versions of the performance maybe should have been more surreal to sell the absurdity and contrast from the real show, but there's still some weird visuals that help this. In particular, a few shots, like the slow zoom on the bears' faces, help make it feel rather disconcerting, which deliberately clashes with the constant cheering. Though maybe that cheering should have been more flat to help that tone. Mr. Big being so bad at comedy it loops back around to being funny could have worked, but unfortunately the fact everyone is laughing due to the mind control blunts that. Logically, you know Mr. Big isn't supposed to be funny in universe, but the constant laughter tricks your mind and muddles the joke a bit. There are admittedly a few jokes that I'd say are but on the whole, the episode feels kinda dragged out, with a premise that really needed to be embellished. Those bits about Becky taking too long to figure out its mind control and the audience barely doing anything against WordGirl weren't just jokes. And that's not even getting into the food thing. Let's get this out of the way. Lasagna is exactly as disgusting as burnt oatmeal, so Mr. Big's plan was always stupid.
Gary, can't you see I was blind? I'll do anything to change your mind.
After beating the energy monster on a hot summer day, WordGirl entrusts her to Exposition Guy for reasons that presumably only make sense to 11-year-old aliens.
Hi!
Eileen easily convinces Exposition Guy to hand over the EM as a gift, and takes her home, plays with her, and feeds her electrical devices. This eventually allows her to escape and make for a winter-themed carnival, which naturally is using up a boatload of power. So this is basically the reverse Earth Day girl? WordGirl and Huggy take down the energy monster quite easily, but Eileen shows up and immediately takes over the role of giant monster for the episode. Thankfully, Exposition Guy shows up with tickets to the carnival's dance show, since they're apparently best friends now. I hate everything about this scene. Eileen lets everyone go, and everyone realizes a winter carnival in the middle of summer is absurd. except it isn't, and I'd love to attend if it didn't guzzle so much power. Let me start by getting into my big issue with this episode. It's a huge missed opportunity, pun intended, to have both your kaiju villains in the same episode and not even have them be giant at the same time. You could have had Eileen throwing buildings to play fetch or something. Also, I'm questioning whether it was a good idea to make Exposition Guy so invested in being bestest friends with a preteen girl. Maybe another kid character would have been preferable. Then again, he does get to be really funny here, and we even flesh out his character a bit.
I've never had a bestest friend in the whole wide world.
Albeit in kind of a sad way. Aside from that, Season 4 is apparently using the birthday girl really well. The montage of her pampering the energy monster as a pet is really cute and really funny, especially when Eileen gives EM a makeover. Wonder if that awakened anything in her. The Summer-Winter Carnival also made for a fun setting, juxtaposing the summer background with the winter decorations, helps give the episode its own visual identity. The action does leave something to be desired. The cold open was fine for a cold open, but the second action scene feels a bit easy for all WordGirl's dread about how monstrous the energy monster has become. Nice use of character poses though. Eileen doesn't get a fight, but if you're gonna skip having both of them giant at once, I suppose cutting Eileen short is kinda necessary to prevent the episode from feeling too packed. Speaking of Eileen, this is the first time I felt genuinely sympathetic toward her, outside of reading too much into her motivations and potential background. She's still being greedy, but she does seem to genuinely care for the energy monster, and she seems to like her back, so I feel a little less bad when Eileen turns giant and tries to crush everyone. This episode isn't as funny as Sunny Days, but it's kinda close, and it's more endearing in its own way. I'm glad Eileen seems to be coming into her own.
We've got to have money.
This is Hal's third episode in one season. Clearly someone on the staff really liked him. While the Botsfords talk about money, Exposition Guy shows up at the window. I'd make another joke about him knowing Becky's identity, but after last episode, I don't want him running up to Becky's window anymore. After getting bested by a new weapon of Granny May's, WordGirl discovers Hal Hardbargain has apparently rebranded as a hero supply shop and reluctantly haggles for a new tool to counter Granny's. When she leaves though, it turns out Hal is switching between heroic and villainous storefronts to continue his war on crime profiteering ways. WordGirl and Granny May continually buy new gadgets until they compare notes and realize they've both been conned. They take down Hal together, and WordGirl gets Granny arrested as well. Becky's upset she lost all her chore money, but Tim buys her the unicorn figurine she wanted as a reward for her hard work. Not sure why she wanted a twerking unicorn so badly, but whatever. I already liked Rat Trap, but this episode is basically that, but even more ridiculous and fun. Hal isn't just scamming villains and supporting WordGirl now, he's actively scamming both sides to keep the fight as stretched out as possible. It helps a lot that there's more variety in the gadgets than just another cheese ray. The montage of WordGirl and Granny going back and forth with random junk is one of the best montages in the show, helping to break up and expedite what would have otherwise gotten pretty tedious. The episode is a good example of using repetition well. The characters get annoyed at how formulaic the episode is, but the viewers get just enough variety from the goofy weaponry and use of montage to not get bored. WordGirl teaming up with Granny May is also pretty fun. That's not someone I expected WordGirl to ever work with, though it is disappointingly brief. The little bit of temptation for WordGirl to free Hal is also a nice touch, more of her being a kid with vices. Lastly, I appreciate the attempt to teach kids about money smarts. Kids learn about haggling, the importance of working hard, and to defend against scams. Don't buy a bootleg Captain America shield unless it can take a hit from a fruitcake. Yes, that's actually a thing in this episode. It almost feels like an episode of a different PBS Kids show that got rewritten as a WordGirl thing. But that's not a bad thing. I like when the show expands its educational horizons beyond how much of the dictionary can we make you memorize. The one disappointing thing about this episode is that Hal feels a bit more downplayed than his previous appearances, but not by much, and the episode still works super well. I don't know how the next Hal episode will improve upon this, but I'm looking forward to it. I was gonna do a joke where I'm all, there's gonna be another Hal episode, right? But then I double checked and there actually is. Only one, but yeah. Ending joke ruined.
I don't have robot duplicates of myself at my beck and call. My robot duplicates tend to want to kill me.
After another loss to WordGirl, Tobey decides to build an evil robot doppelganger that can beat her at her own game.
Oh, looks like I forgot the rechargeable power pack. Billy, you okay?
No. Programmed to be totally devoted to Tobey, WordBot starts ravaging the city to make monuments to him. WordGirl takes WordBot on, but I'm gonna be nice and say it ended up as a stalemate. When Tobey shrugs WordBot off to talk to WordGirl though, WordBot, I can't believe I'm saying this, but goes yandere. Tobey distracts WordBot with the charm of an upscale British lad.
You've turned out to be quite an impressive piece of machinery, indeed.
While Huggy successfully removes WordBot's power pack. Tobey gets grounded again, and WordBot is stowed in WordGirl's trophy room where they very bluntly tease a return. That never happens. This isn't the first time they've had an evil WordGirl doppelganger, but the execution is different enough that it feels distinct. I think I'm a clone now, focused more on the populace being turned against WordGirl, again, while this episode focuses more on the idea of WordGirl directly facing something that can do anything she can. The fight between the two is kinda disappointing, basically being them chasing each other, but they at least do an alright job having WordBot plausibly feel like a match for WordGirl. What I really like about her, though, is the presentation. WordBot's design, while maybe not robot-y enough, aside from the face, she's essentially WordGirl with a few screws dotted around, is great. The color scheme, a darker version of WordGirl's, is simple but effective, and I love how Tobey decided to stamp his face on her belt buckle, of all things. Much like evil, malicious WordGirl, WordBot has a distorted version of WordGirl's voice, but the crew went one step farther and created distorted versions of the background music, too.
Somehow we must attract the attention of WordGirl. Any ideas, WordBot?
WordBot being programmed as completely devoted to Tobey was a brilliant idea. I love how Tobey basically created his own personal WordGirl that can never say no to him, but he still shrugs her off in favor of the real one. Not because he's grown to dislike the obsession, that hasn't happened yet, just because he himself is just as obsessed with WordGirl. And all this backfiring when WordBot gets jealous, giving Tobey a taste of his own medicine, was also brilliant. Even though Tobey doesn't seem to catch on to the irony at any point. He'll get it eventually. The action may not live up to this episode's potential, but it was way more interesting as a character piece than I expected. Kinda wish they did do that return they set up. Oh well.
Look out!
Thanks.
I'm not just a narrator, I'm also a devoted friend.
Aww.
Too cool to forget, come back, 'cause we are family.
All the adults in the city mysteriously leave for work, leaving all the kids on their own. Naturally, they take advantage to do whatever they want. Yes, this episode is basically just a Jimmy Neutron movie.
We can try coffee. Ugh.
This is the correct reaction to coffee, for the record. Where are the adults? On the outskirts of town, carving Mr. Big's face into a mountain. He even demonstrates this by having them do ballet. I mean, waste pizza. I was thinking of the 90s Power Rangers movie.
Not all adults. I'm fine. I will say whatever you want, Mr. Big.
Good.
Oh my god, the narrator has fallen. We need to stop watching the show before Mr. Big figures out how to control our minds. While the adults continue working on Mr. Big's terrible tourist trap tribute to Tim Self, Becky realizes having no restrictions or rules is exhausting and miserable, so she tricks the narrator into revealing where everyone went.
I mean, aren't you on my side?
Look, I don't really pick sides.
Heh. WordGirl and Huggy travel to the construction site, and Mr. Big tries to tempt WordGirl with the prospect of an adult-free life. However, she very heavy-handedly talks about how necessary guardians are. Mr. Big agrees to destroy Mount Rushhere, not because of the speech, but because he thinks his own face is ugly. Seriously.
These are the faces of evil.
The adults return, and everything goes back to normal, to the annoyance of TJ, who apparently never got the moral. I like when the show has morals for kids, and this isn't a bad one, though I don't think it expresses it that well. The episode is both too blunt and too vague. WordGirl spells out the lesson very explicitly, but we don't get to see much of the consequences of no adults. Becky's the only one who suffers at all from it. All the other kids are only shown having a great time, save for a brief moment where some other kids are just wandering aimlessly, looking more confused than upset. Remember when I mentioned the Jimmy Neutron movie earlier? While we do get a montage of all the kids having fun, we see the next morning that almost everyone is sad and sick. The mission to rescue their parents feels more like a natural progression, even without the whole sacrifice to a chicken god thing. I'd talk about the Power Rangers movie too, but that wasn't really trying to push a moral that hard anyway. They were more busy talking about grief and independence or something like that. But while I think the moral was mishandled a bit, At least the episode was kinda funny. One of my new favorite jokes on the show is the rock music during the Kids Run Wild montage suddenly cutting out when we see Becky and Violet at the library, and Mr. Big gets a lot of good lines.
Mount Rushhere.
As in people will rush here to see it?
Oh, I didn't think of that. But yes!
The ending is also anticlimactic, but in a fun, goofy way. While we get another Huggy and Leslie fight, Mr. Big literally gives up because he hates how his dream project turned out. The one praise I'll give that's not humor related is the beginning. While Tim and Sally speak in drone, making it pretty obvious what's going on, especially since we see Mr. Big in the title card, it's not explicitly revealed they're under mind control until we cut to the carving site later on. It's a nice way to build some intrigue and suspense. Overall, this episode was pretty enjoyable, but if you're gonna have a moral like this, at least do it well. The best I can say is that the moral is a good sentiment in isolation. Good luck getting kids to absorb it though. If your kid doesn't whine and rebel, there might be something wrong with them. Speaking from personal experience here.
All the anger, all the rage, is just to cover my loss.
The Botsfords are driving for Pretty Princess on Ice, but Beatrice Bigsby is annoyed at how all the traffic is making her late for work. Upon reaching the end of her rope, she Lady Redundant Womanifies herself and sends out an army of duplicates to inflict a plague of traffic jams on the city. Becky deploys that balloon Becky we saw once as a decoy, complete with voice responses, but when she gets overwhelmed by the duplicates, Bob finds himself unable to leave the car himself. WordGirl overcomes these obstacles by summoning Tim to act as a crossing guard, something he's apparently been practicing for a while. Tim's force of personality overcomes the dupes, and LDR's tiny car gets obliterated by Tobey's robots, which just appear out of nowhere. I guess they were summoned by the forces of karma. I feel like this episode was trying to do something original with the whole traffic concept, but really it just feels like a rehash of line lessons with Lady Redundant Woman. LDR gets angry at a minor annoyance, and she decides to take it out on everyone. The major differences are that she never realizes the error of her ways, and WordGirl doesn't get f***ing pissed. While line lessons had more of a casual air and showed the duplicates being rude in a bunch of different ways, here they just obstruct cars. It's not nearly as interesting or varied. The soundtrack and the way the characters talk make the scenario feel more intense and less easygoing, which in turn makes the episode's tone feel less unique. I actually think the highlights were everything to do with the Botsfords. Tim is endearingly invested in being a crossing guard, and when called upon, takes the job hilariously seriously. Sally supports this with her apparently being into crossing guards. Very into crossing guards. And the Beccatron adds a new spin to the Becky's lame excuses running gag / cliche. Though while her poorly timed pre-recorded platitudes can work on their own, the real gold is TJ's baffled reactions.
I agree with whatever you just said.
That's good, 'cause I'm right.
I love unicorns. That cloud looks like a porcupine. Did somebody order a pizza?
Mom, Becky's scaring me.
I'd say they should have focused more on the Botsfords in the car, but the Beccatron gag could easily get annoying and or boring if it was stretched too long, so improving the Lady Redundant Woman A-plot would be more effective. I don't think it's that hard, just have the duplicates do more things than stand in front of cars and fight WordGirl. Make sure to keep Tim saving the day, but before then have the duplicates do things like form pyramids to be walls and yell at the other drivers more. I could envision a dupe vandalizing someone's car who gets frustrated and decides to clean it up while they're in traffic. The most interesting thing I can say is that, in conjunction with line lessons, LDR seems to be setting up a pattern of if I suffer, so must everyone else, which would be a kinda interesting expansion of her character, but I doubt the show will explore this more in depth. This review wasn't exactly a rant, but I regrettably didn't have a super time here. It's okay at best unless you ignore everything the main villain does, in which case it becomes kinda entertaining.
This is so silly. Ugh. I just want to go into the kitchen. Why do I have to wait? What is going on?
You think you have it bad, TJ? Consider yourself lucky you don't have super hearing like, absolutely no one else in this house. That'd really suck for this hypothetical person. No matter how distracted they'd be by, say, building a balloon decoy of themselves. We start off on a very pointedly stormy day, which can only portend good things. Sally has invited Tobey over for a playdate, And he brings over a board game of his own invention. By Jove, you've wrecked my robot! Apparently, it took months to create Battleship with tiny robots. Anyway, Becky reluctantly agrees to play, even as mysterious tremors strike and Bob starts yelling about the giant robots outside. Eventually, Becky catches on. The giant robots are connected to the game and even have a function to hide themselves when Sally comes around. But this isn't the end-all be-all of Tobey's plan. He set up this scenario to try and prove that Becky is WordGirl. Obviously unable to leave herself, Becky has Bob take down the giant robots, tricking Tobey by... wait... In any case, Bob uses a talking WordGirl doll to create the illusion WordGirl and Becky are separate people, and Sally calls Claire to take Tobey away, and presumably get a court order keeping him a mile away from the Botsford house at all times. So yeah, this episode is not particularly subtle about being a sequel/remake of the original Tobey shorts. They even mentioned going through something like this before in the past. But that's not necessarily a problem, because this is basically a... let's say more polished version of the shorts. As I joked, the episode tries really hard to feel more tense, what with the stormy sky, the occasional lightning strikes, and the amount of pressure Becky is put under. Some of it is kinda cheesy, but that doesn't hurt the tone that much. Probably the biggest differences from the original short story-wise is that there, Tobey just fell into a playdate with Becky and evidence that she's WordGirl. Here, Tobey's been looking out for clues and planned out the playdate as a trap, a deliberate ploy to prove her identity. It makes Tobey feel more savvy and more dangerous. Admittedly, him using the bathroom and leaving Becky alone put a bit of a damper on that, but he is like 11 years old, and maybe you could argue he hit a camera on the board game? Just not a microphone, I guess. The board game itself wasn't technically relevant. He could have brought over some Princess Triana stuff for a book club or something, but tying the game to his robot's activities is the definition of extra, and I kinda respect it on some level. Also, we get confirmation Tobey's crush on WordGirl does extend to Becky. Take that as you will.
The same sparkling smile, the same ruby lips, the same... I realize I've said too much.
Even the definitions play into the story, as Becky realizes too late that defining realize doesn't help her case.
Tobey realizing all those things made him think that I'm WordGirl. And how I just realized that I probably shouldn't have defined that word.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you figured this out back in season 1.
Let me look it up in the dictionary.
Dictionary?
Actually, come to think of it, is this the first episode where Becky never turns into WordGirl? I feel like yes, but I'm too lazy to check. And after all of Tobey's smugness, all the stress he inflicted on Becky, it's really satisfying for her to swat his game away and for him to devolve into Kung Fu. Billy Cranston, he is not. I will admit, though, I'm starting to get tired of Claire McAllister's entrances, no matter how ridiculous and overdramatic they get. If the writers really did want to take one of the arcs from the shorts and bring it up to modern standards, i.e. not having a cliffhanger every 2 minutes, I think the Tobey shorts were the most unique and held the most potential, and that potential was not squandered. I've said before that threatening WordGirl's secret identity always raises the stakes and makes it feel more personal, and this episode does that better than any of the others so far. It's not the funniest episode, but it's not boring either, and it's one of the more gripping episodes of WordGirl. If I watched this one as a kid, I could easily imagine myself being on the edge of my seat the whole time. As an adult, though, I was unfortunately just on the inner rim of my seat instead. Best episodes of the season? Well, it's actually just one, A World Without WordGirl. Feels a bit unfair to elevate the two-parter like this, but then again, I rated a two-parter as the worst last time, so I think it all balances out. A World Without WordGirl just feels like an event more than even the other two-parters. It's not just another villain plotting to destroy the city, it's an entire alternate world Becky has to navigate and undo. Top that off with some interesting character development and ridiculous attention to detail, you can feel how much passion was put into the story. Least favorite? Well, it was honestly a bit of a tough call. There were several episodes I didn't really like, but they were usually paired with much better episodes. One case where that didn't save them though? Sunny Days with the Chance of Showers and Seymour right after this. I feel kinda bad for Sunny Days getting dragged down, but for as funny as it is, I think the title character being a bit of a dud is quite a black mark, and is paired with an episode I really flat out dislike. Right after this is just so boring. Tim and Sally are the only parts I found entertaining, the Smooth Brothers being dopey and WordGirl being the sole voice of reason yet again didn't do it for me. It's really just going through the motions for a Seymour episode. Overall, though, the season kinda just continued on from season 3 quality-wise. Several duds, but several successes as well, and I'd say the average quality was higher, if only slightly. I am looking forward to season 5. It seems like there's a lot of intriguing episodes there. But first we have a slight detour to make. Next time on...
I did not jinx it.
All right, I'm stopping.
Our fun dad-daughter thingy.
Please don't yell at me.
It's time to put on my danger pants.
Oh, huh. Will you look at that?
Becky.
No.